All right, folks, welcome into another brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast, an NCAA Tournament victory edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. Bluff City Media, of course, at Bluff City_media. And then we're over on Facebook as well. Just search 901 Soccer and just search Bluff City Media. We should pop right up. And, of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to like the video, please make sure to comment on the video, and please make sure to subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. Now, what we have for you tonight, this is Sunday night. We've given it a day to settle in, to look ahead perhaps. Memphis women's soccer beats Illinois in the NCAA tournament at the Billy Murphy Track and Soccer Stadium on Saturday night. Over 1,800 people showed up at the games, the third largest crowd in the history of Memphis women's soccer since they've moved back to Park Avenue campus in 2019. That win means that they advance to the next round of the NCAA tournament to face TCU in Fort Worth on Thursday. So we'll talk about the game against Illinois on Saturday night. We will talk about looking ahead to the game against TCU on Thursday. So we're going to start with the game last night. And first and foremost, obviously, we got to go back to this team got screwed in the seeding. It's not something that you can get away from. Try as, much as we'd like to, try as we might. This team went undefeated. They didn't lose a single game in regulation or overtime all season. 16-0-3 on the season, and they got a 7 seed. And I don't want to belabor the point because you can go back and check out the last episode of the 901 Soccer Podcast that we did where we talked about how they got interseeded and what else is Memphis supposed to do. I mean, all they can do is not lose, and they didn't lose. And the committee or the powers that be were just like, nah, not good enough, sorry. And the reason that you want the highest seed possible is because, in theory, that gives you as easy of a path as possible to as deep in the tournament as possible. And if I'm not mistaken, with one exception, every single higher seed won in the NCAA tournament first round. I think the lone exception, there were two. The Mississippi State was the higher seed. They were eliminated at home by Lipscomb. So that was a surprise. And then in the 8-9 matchup, Ohio State went down to Athens and beat Georgia. But other than that, higher seeds, I think, chalk all the way through. So that is why you want to have as high a seed as possible so that you can go as far in the tournament as possible. That's not to say that this Memphis team isn't capable of beating higher seeds. I think they are. I think at their best, this Memphis team can go toe-to-toe and beat anybody in the country, and we have seen that this year. You think about they beat Vanderbilt this year, who number 1 seed in that bracket, Tennessee, and this was Brooks Monaghan, ball knower, straight up said, I would rather be a 7 seed right now than to be the 3 seed Tennessee and have to play North Carolina a second time this season. And so I take it back. 3. I'm undermining my own point and my own credibility. That's not fun. But 3. There were 3 higher seeds that lost, all from the SEC, funnily enough. Mississippi State to Lipscomb, Georgia to Ohio State, and Tennessee to North Carolina. If you'll recall, one of the things that made the game of the century between Memphis and Tennessee earlier this year the game of the century is the fact that Tennessee was the number 2 team in the country on the back of a very big win against North Carolina, the reigning national champions earlier this year. And it's hard to beat the same team twice in the same season. Look no further than Memphis and UTSA. But Tennessee goes down to North Carolina. But like I said, by and large, the higher seeds win. And so if you're Memphis, you want as high a seed as possible. The game against Illinois, I think, with the exception of maybe the last 5 minutes of the game, Memphis was head and shoulders the better team. Head and shoulders. And I don't like the phrase, and it's not close, but it wasn't close. On the scoreboard, it was 1 goal, and yes, there was a stretch of time where it was tied 1-1. If put your hand up if you've heard me decry some of the bad habits I've seen out of the goalkeepers on the Memphis men's team. And if you'll recall, I always say, do what Abby Kudla does and just catch the ball. Well, the one time that Abby Kudla gives up a bad rebound, Illinois pokes it in, and it's 1-1. But it ended up, I don't want to say not mattering, but it ended up not costing them. And she was otherwise very good in goals. One mistake. You just worry because in big games like that, sometimes the mistakes get magnified, and that's all it takes. But luckily, Memphis had Aiki Tagawa on the team. And I'll say that Brooks Monaghan and Finley Lavin in the postgame both repeatedly stressed that this was a complete team effort. I'm in complete agreement with them, but goals change games. Goals win games. Aiki Tagawa got both goals. She's going to get the lion's share of the headlines. That's not to take anything away from anybody else. But she scored the 2 goals. Memphis wins 2-1. The first goal, absolutely fantastic play. Quick throw in, kind of caught in Indiana. Well, kind of caught Illinois napping a little bit. Ashley Henderson with a fantastic layoff. And I may not know a lot tactically, X's and O's, coaching-wise. I would not leave Aiki Tagawa completely unmarked at the 18-yard box. I wouldn't do that. I'm glad Illinois did. I'm just saying that I wouldn't do that. But it worked out because that meant that I scored and made it 1-0. Then, of course, we talked about the Illinois tying it up. And that was, they had a chance. Illinois had a chance very early in the game. And then they scored the goal maybe with 15, 20 minutes left in the first half. Memphis really started to create some more chances the remainder of the first half. I hit the crossbar at one point, and not just straight hit the crossbar, but forced the keeper to make a good save and parry it onto the crossbar. And I think it went out for a corner kick. And then the game completely flips. 30 seconds left in the first half. Very easy penalty decision from the referee. Handball. And the Illinois players went nuts. Like, you have to check that. You have to check that. And I'm just sitting there going, yeah, you can check that. That's a pretty obvious handball to me. Referee goes and looks at it and says, yeah, that's a penalty. So I don't know if the Illinois players felt better about themselves or what, but I will also say this. I've made this point several times during the games. I don't know if I've made it on the show. One of the issues with doing VAR in college, especially with the setup at the Murphy Track and Soccer Complex right now, is the camera angles they're bad. And at Memphis, you've got 2 camera angles. You've got a camera at midfield at field level, and one basically at the baseball stadium way up in the air. So your camera angles for a VAR review are probably not going to be any better than what the referee is already seeing. Especially if it's if it's far away from the cameras on the opposite side of the field or down in the corner, and there's a lot of bodies in the way. I guess it makes people feel better that we have it. But regardless of camera angle or Illinois players, I mean, it was pretty easy handball. I was not worried about it getting overturned on VAR. Referee comes back, says, yeah, it's still a penalty. And Aiki Tagawa steps up and buries it. And if I'm not mistaken, I was the only player when Memphis lost to UTSA on penalties. She was the only one who made her kick. I know Ashley Henderson sent one over the bar and Finley Lavin sent one over the bar. But I stepped up and buried hers, and she sent the keeper the wrong way. Aplomb, 2-1, rock and roll. So you go up 2-1 into the half, and typically what you'll see is a team settle in, bunker in, take their foot off the gas, see out the result, whatever you want to call it, cede possession to the other team, where the other team creates a lot of chances. I feel like we saw that a little bit in 2023 against LSU in the NCAA tournament, where they went up 2-0 real quick and then allowed LSU to have most of the ball the rest of the game and held on for a 2-1 win. But again, it's the tournament, survive and advance. Who cares how you get it done? There's no such thing as style points in a survive and advance scenario. But the second half of this game, that was not the case. Memphis kept most of the ball, and for 80 to 85 minutes, 35 to 40 minutes of the second half, Memphis looked like the team that was more likely to score. They didn't. Was kind of hoping that they would have, because you do get to a point late in the game where the other team is going to get their chances, and with it being just a one-goal game, you get nervous when the other team gets the ball in the final third, and you get that heart and mouth moment where wasn't really a lot of that, I didn't think. Credit to Memphis defensively. Finley Lavin made I wouldn't say challenges, but her positioning was very, very, very good. I mean, it usually is, but it really showed, I felt like, last night against Illinois. They would come down the left side, and she would just go boop and just get it, and always made the right turn, always made the correct clearance. And then Abby Kudla, when called into action, held the ball, distributed it smartly. When it got down to the last minute, didn't try to play possession, didn't do anything cute, fancy, and just sent it as far down the field as she possibly could to kill the clock, which is fantastic. And it worked, and Memphis gets the 2-1 win. So they now advance to the second round. And I just want to give a shout out to everybody that showed up last night. That 1,801 people showed up for the game last night. That is the third largest crowd since the U of M has moved back onto South Campus in 2019. That is a bigger crowd than was out there for the LSU game in 2021 in the NCAA tournament. And it's only smaller than the 2023 LSU crowd, over 2,000 people, and this year's Tennessee crowd, which was 2,200 people. I got there at about 10 till 6 last night. And when I pulled up, there were probably 200 or 300 people in line to get in. And I don't know if they were selling tickets on site or if that was just the line and they were just waiting until an hour before kickoff to let everybody in. I'm not sure what the deal was, but that was really cool to see a big line of people. And honestly, I figured it looked and felt like a bigger crowd than the Tennessee game. I guess it was only about 400 people less than the Tennessee game, so visually it looked the same. I was really hoping, you can't get mad. It's the third largest crowd in the history of that stadium. That is fantastic, and there's nothing to be upset about. But I was just hoping for a little bit more of that. 2 would have been really cool. And breaking the record would have been even better. But it was a college football Saturday, But 1801, still fantastic. Third largest crowd in the history of the stadium. 2 of your 3 biggest crowds ever were this year. And I think within the city, that speaks to the traction and the viability and the staying power and the attention and spotlight that this program has gotten. And when they've been given that spotlight, they have rewarded the people who have showed up with quality soccer and good results. Which brings us to our next point. In the last 5 seasons, so since the 2021, the end of COVID and the 2021 season, that's 5 years, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 5 seasons. Memphis has now won 6 NCAA tournament games. That's phenomenal. I think you probably have to go back 15, 16, 17 years for the men's basketball program to find 6 NCAA tournament wins. I know since John Calipari's been gone, they've won 3. 2 under Passner and 1 under Penny. 6 NCAA tournament wins. 5 of those NCAA tournament wins against power conference opposition. I mean, we know Memphis has no problem going up against power conference opposition. Brooks always schedules 4, 5, 6, not quite 7 games against power conference teams in the non-conference schedule. He does it. He's done it every year since I've been covering this program. And more often than not, they win those games. Just look at this year. They beat Ole Miss. They beat Missouri. They beat Vanderbilt. They got a draw with Tennessee. And the only reason they didn't beat Iowa State is because they couldn't get to Ames. You also wonder if maybe if they had played and beaten Iowa State, if maybe the seed would have been a little bit better. Anyway, I digress. But not only are they performing well in the NCAA tournament, obviously they didn't make it last year, but this is their fourth straight NCAA tournament appearance where they have advanced. In 2021, they beat LSU in the first round and lost to Duke in the second round. In 2022, they went to St. Louis and beat the Billikens. They went to Fayetteville for a neutral site game and beat Mississippi State, and then they fell to Arkansas in penalties in the Sweet 16. 2023, probably the best year in the history of the program. Again, brutally underseeded. They beat LSU in the first round. They beat Notre Dame in the second round. They lose to Pitt in the Sweet 16. They didn't get in last year. Egregious screw job. If they had gotten in, they probably go on the road to South Carolina. Who knows if they win that game or not. But this year, they get in. They beat Illinois. Now they're playing TCU in Fort Worth. But they're still unbeaten on the season, 17-0-3, still the only unbeaten team in the game. And I don't know what else you can say about the trajectory and the quality of this program, right? I've made the point several times that a good comparison for Memphis women's soccer is Gonzaga men's basketball, in that, you know, they're not in the sexiest conference, but they keep winning a lot of games. They keep going to the NCAA tournament, and eventually there's going to be a breakthrough where they make consistent deep runs every year, every other year. I mean, Gonzaga, for a while there, was flaming out in the first or second round for 15 years in a row or so. But then I think in 2015, they went to the Elite Eight, and then they went to like 11 straight second weekends. That included 2 national title game appearances. And Mark Few's been there forever and won a ton of basketball games. Same thing here with the University of Memphis women's soccer. Brooks Monaghan's been here a long time, 26 years now. That's over a quarter century. And all he does is win a lot of 13 NCAA tournament appearances. Now, basically, we've gotten to it. There was a stretch where, yeah, they would get in, but it was just kind of an auto L, and they got knocked out. And now they've leveled up. And like I said, 4 straight times they've made the tournament and won at least a game. And this is the sort of thing, I think, more than just about anything, that is going to eventually convince or change the minds of the powers that be when it comes to seeding Memphis in the NCAA tournaments in the future, is that if you can keep winning tournament games and keep making deep runs and showing them, hey, you know, we're actually a really good program, and maybe we do deserve the benefit of the doubt once in a blue moon when it comes to seeding, eventually you'll catch a break and then reap the reward of that. But you also think Memphis has now hosted 3 NCAA tournament games at home. They've won all 3 of those. And I think that's by 3, 4, 5, 7. That's a combined 7-2. They've won those games. All 3 against power conference opponents. That also runs their unbeaten streak at home to 39 games. They hadn't lost a home game since 2021. That's 22, 23, 24. That's 4 consecutive seasons of not losing at home. Like, you don't come to Memphis and win. It doesn't happen. Doesn't matter if you're a power conference team. Doesn't matter if you're an AAC team. Doesn't matter if it's a preseason game against a community college. You do not come here and win. It doesn't happen. And I cannot wait to see what kind of raucous home field advantage the Tigers are going to have when the stadium renovations are complete. And that's something that Coach Monaghan talked about last night. And he said, you know, if you've been around Brooks Monaghan long enough, you know when he thinks something's funny and when he's not. And every so often he'll drop a little gem. And he dropped one last night in the post game. You can go check it out in my match recap over at Beyond the 90. You can check it out on the Tigers YouTube channel, where I think he has just loved everybody being able to bring their chairs to sit on the track at these games And every time he's been asked about it, he's had nothing but good things to say about how the fans have embraced it. And they have, and credit to you, the fan, for embracing it. And that is a situation where things can very easily go south and one person can ruin everything for everybody else. And at no point has that ever been a problem at any of the games this season. So shout out and credit to you, the fans, for showing out like you're supposed to and acting right like you're supposed to. I'm sure the folks at the U of M really, really appreciate that. But it has been really cool to see everybody just roll up with a chair and hang out. Like that's pretty fun. I mean, it's we talk about the accessibility of the program because it is, with the exception of last night, it is free to go to the games. But I mean, you're sitting at field level like you're out watching a game at Mike Rose, but it's you and 1,800 other people. That's pretty cool. So Coach Monaghan has been very, very glad and appreciative of the support, and I think he's just tickled pink at how everybody has embraced not having bleachers and just hanging out in your chairs. But last night he dropped a gem, man. It was he said, I love that everybody's been able to just bring their lounge chairs, and people were here so early, and getting here, pull up your chair and light them up if you got them, and everybody in the room just fell out laughing. It was good. But that all might be the case, and it is. But I think he's really looking forward to when they have that stadium built. And not just from the stadium fan experience perspective, but what's the biggest part of that stadium is they're going to have a locker room for the team. And just last night, if I'm not mistaken, somebody said, "Is that their locker room?" And I'm like, "Yeah, have you not heard me make the point that their locker room is essentially a construction site trailer?" And so that is really the most important part of the stadium getting built. And it's been their success that has allowed that to get built. And, if you were out there last night, they've got the QR code, they got the renderings, and they're good renderings. So I'm sure you can still go to lizaslight.org and donate. On the subject, I probably definitely before the game on Thursday, I can't promise that it'll be Monday, but it'll be Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I will be putting an attendance piece together over at Beyond the 90, and not just what the raw numbers are, but what it means and why having two really big crowds this year is really important, especially as you are in the home stretch of trying to get the stadium built. So that's all fantastic, but bringing it back to the actual games on the field, Memphis gets to go to Fort Worth on Thursday and play TCU. And honestly, I'll defer to Coach Monaghan. When asked about how much he knew about Illinois, he said nothing. We're going to go watch some film, and then we'll get back to you. I knew it's probably the only time I can say I knew the same amount about an opponent as Coach Monaghan did, in that I also knew nothing about Illinois soccer. Coach Monaghan probably knows a little bit more about TCU than I do, but that's because I know nothing, and he, by his own admission, said he knows just a little bit more about them than he did Illinois. Looking at TCU, they played their first NCAA tournament game Friday night against Grambling, and like I said, this tournament can be mostly chalk, and they dismantled Grambling 7-0. So you knew if you could get past Illinois, you were probably going to Fort Worth to play TCU. So that game is on Thursday at TCU. The game is going to be at 7 p.m. It's going to be on ESPN+. There have been a couple of people that have asked me, is there going to be a watch party somewhere for this? And all I can tell you is that I have made that suggestion, and they're talking about it. Whether they're seriously talking about it, or whether it actually happens, or it doesn't happen, or if it does, where it's going to be, I don't know. When I know, I will pass it on to you. But for right now, all I can tell you, I have made the suggestion. It is out of my hands. I would love for there to be a watch party somewhere, because I think that would be really cool and get everybody in the mentality of soccer watch party for the World Cup next summer. But for right now, I don't know. It is they are aware of the suggestion, and the ball is in their court. But talking about TCU, They have had a women's soccer program since 1986. They've only had 3 head coaches. They were really kind of a nothing burger for a really, really long time until 2016. And then all of a sudden, they're just like an automatic NCAA tournament team. They've been to 9 of the last 10 NCAA tournaments. Sounds kind of like Memphis, where I don't think the program is nearly as at Memphis is nearly as old as it is at TCU. I think the program at Memphis only predates Brooks Monaghan by 4 or 5 years, maybe. So that would put you at 95, 96. So this TCU program is probably about 10 years older. But, under their first coach, David Rubinson, they went 151, 189, and 23. Not great. Under Dan Abdallah from 05 to 11, 57, 65, and 9. Current coach is Eric Bell, took over in 2012. First 4 seasons, 500 or worse. And then in 2016, it's like a switch got flipped. First round of the NCAA tournament, first round of the NCAA tournament, second round of the NCAA tournament, first round of the NCAA tournament. Then you get the weird COVID season, which actually it's the 2020 season, but it took place in the spring of 21. They went to the Elite 8 in in the real 21 season, they went to the Sweet 16. 22, they went to the Sweet 16. 23, they missed the tournament. Last year, they went to the second round. This year, they're in the second round. So they have really kind of much the same way that Memphis has. Once they started making the NCAA tournament, they started really ramping it up, right? So this is going to be a tough nut for Memphis to crack. They cannot just go in there and expect to win. They will have to play their best to win. But like I said earlier, and like I said last week with Jeffrey Wright and Company on 92.9 and with Greg and Eli on Sports 56, this Memphis team at their best, I will put up against anybody in the country. I mean, that is how highly I think of this team. And something that Coach Monaghan mentioned last night, and you can go check my match recap over at Beyond the 90. It's how I ended it. He said, let me get over there and just pull this up because I want to give you the exact quote. Because I thought it was really, really good. And I think it speaks to what we might be able to see on Thursday from them against TCU. He said, I think it says a lot. We have had a lot of success. Finley's been part of a Sweet 16 team. I just think that Memphis soccer is well known and very well respected, and that takes time. With the world we live in, the schools that have big football teams, usually the soccer teams get a little bit more attention and all that stuff. I think these girls have proven that you don't have to be in one of those leagues, and you better watch out if you are in one of those leagues. So they are definitely going to be relishing this opportunity against a power conference opponent in their house. Now, you want to look at what TCU has done this season. They are 16-2-2, but they don't look just overwhelming. A lot of 1-0 and 2-1 scores, a lot of 1-goal games, which is not necessarily a bad thing. They don't really have any bad losses. Let's see. There is one common opponent. Should have been 2, just 1. They too went to UTSA. Memphis beat UTSA 2-0 in San Antonio. TCU beat them 1-0 in San Antonio. So, common opponent. I don't know how much that counts come NCAA tournament time, but if you're looking for reasons to say this is why Memphis can and will beat TCU, you look at common opponent. Memphis beat UTSA better than TCU did. But they also beat a number 9 Iowa team. They beat a number 14 Kansas team. They did beat Iowa State 3-1. Memphis could have and probably would have beaten Iowa State had they been able to get there. They got a draw against the number 11 Texas Tech. They beat number 10 Baylor. But in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, they lost to BYU on penalties. They went 2-2 penalties. They did not win that. But then most recently against Grambling, they won 7-0. And I was a little bit surprised and a little bit disappointed that they play in a 15 or 1,600 seat stadium there in Fort Worth. And they only, I think it's called Rosenthal Stadium. And I think they only drew 700 people, according to the box score on their website, which is a fraction of what that's like. Memphis drew like 2.5, 3 times that. So I don't know how challenging of an atmosphere it'll be for Memphis. But it is on the road. They are a number 2 seed. But like I said, I think they're gettable. And Memphis will need to play their best. This is not a cakewalk. They are a 2 seed. Memphis is a 7 seed. This is a chalky type of event. But Memphis is best. I'll put them up against any team in the country. And if they are able to get past TCU, that would put them into their 3rd Sweet 16 in 4 years, and they would have a possible matchup. They would play the winner of North Carolina and Texas Tech. That game is also in Fort Worth, because the second round of the Sweet 16 is kind of a pod situation. Which is another reason I would love Memphis to eventually get a 2 seed or a 1 seed, because that would mean not only are they hosting, but they're hosting other teams playing a neutral site game, and that's more soccer for Memphis. If you're able to get past TCU, that's a tall task. I understand that, but if you are, that sets up a potential matchup against North Carolina in the next round. And I cannot think of a more nationally visible, nationally relevant game for Memphis and Memphis women's soccer history than to play North Carolina. They've won 22 national championships. The next closest school has won 4. The power of women's college soccer is the ACC. North Carolina is the power of the ACC. And if you're able to get past TCU and have that Sweet 16 matchup against North Carolina, funnily enough, you would be the higher seeded team, which is bananas to think about. That would be the biggest test and maybe the best win if they were able to pull it off. But let's not count the chickens before they hatch, and let's focus on TCU. If anybody can get somebody dialed in and focused for a game, I know it's Brooks Monaghan. And if anybody can go on the road as a 7 seed and beat the 2 seed, it's this Memphis team. All right, that is going to do it tonight for us, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for reading everything I've written. Thanks for being at the game Saturday night. Really, really appreciate it. I know the players and the coaches and the staff at the University of Memphis appreciate it as well. And hopefully we have a watch party and more watch parties as the NCAA tournament progresses. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Again, I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. Find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. Bluff City Media on Twitter at BluffCity_media. You can find us on Facebook, 901 Soccer, Bluff City Media, and of course right here on YouTube. Please like the video, please comment on the video, and subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. We will talk to you later.